Thank you for joining today's Idaho Falls Rotary Club program. My name is Liza Leonard, and I am the president of the Idaho Falls Rotary Club. Welcome. We are an international service club here at Rotary, and the Idaho Falls Club represents our local membership, but worldwide there are approximately 1.2 million Rotarians. Our motto is service above self. And here at the Idaho Falls Rotary Club, we are continuing to accept new members. We'd like to cover just a little bit of club business before we get to today's program. We want to remind Rotarians that today at 4 p.m. we have our first duck race planning meeting. So we will gather to discuss the possibility of holding the duck races again. That's been a signature event with the Rotary Club, and we will be covering that topic at 4 o'clock. If you'd like to join us, please reach out and we can send you the Zoom link. And I'll post that actually on the chat here in just a moment as well. I want to remind you also that tomorrow we will be holding our blood drive with the American Red Cross. So that is tomorrow, Thursday, March 11th. That begins at 1 p.m. and ends at 6 p.m. Most of our blood donation slots have been filled, but if you'd still like to donate, I think we have 3 available slots and could probably squeeze in some standbys as well. Our bigger need from Rotarians and the big ask right now is to help us on the logistics side with some of the takedown. So we are asking for a couple of volunteers to help from about 4 p.m. to about 6:30 p.m. just to help wrap up the event. If you're interested and available, please reach out to Josh Johnson. I'll post a little bit of information on the chat as well about signing up to be a blood donor or helping with the takedown of that event. Thank you to all the Rotarians who have signed up to donate or volunteer for that event. Really looking forward to being able to provide some service as a club to our community. There's a couple of other things that are coming up that I just wanted to make you aware of. You've probably seen in the newsletter and on the website or on our social media that we're trying a new thing to help to support some of our local businesses, and in particular, some of those businesses that have supported us in the duck races for years. This month, we have selected one of our restaurant donors, Smoke and Fins, to kind of focus our efforts. So what we are doing is inviting all Rotarians, if you have an opportunity to dine out or carry out, maybe consider this month patronizing Smoke and Fins, and also mentioning to them that you're there as a Rotarian and that you appreciate their support of the duck races. We'll try to continue this program so that Rotarians can kind of focus our efforts and make sure that some of our local businesses feel our support as a club. We also want to make sure that you're aware of a fun family event that we have for Rotarians and your family members to come together. We're going to be doing a night at the museum on Wednesday, March 31st with the Museum of Idaho. They've allowed us to have exclusive access from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. that evening, where we can safely go with our families or our little pods and kind of tour the new exhibit at the museum and the expansion that was just wrapped up a few months ago. And that's a very exciting event. We, again, are excited to be able to bring our Rotarians together safely, distance, but still doing something as a club. So again, that is the evening of Wednesday, March 31st at the Museum of Idaho. Thank you, Gina Stevenson and the others involved in arranging that program. One other thing to just put on your calendar, in April, we will be getting back to some of our service with the City of Idaho Falls and the Parks and Rec Department, where we will go and do our Greenbelt cleanup. Right now, that is scheduled for Wednesday, April 14th. So please mark your calendar for that. That will be in the afternoon that day, and we'll continue to send reminders as we get a little bit closer to that. I just want to mention as well, our club continues to donate meals, as we have had for months, to the soup kitchen, and so we are continuing that through March and April. So another good use of our funds and a wonderful service project that we're able to provide to the community as Rotarians. Now I would like to turn it over to our program chair, Mayor Rebecca Casper. Thank you.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Rotary. Good afternoon and all that good stuff. Today, we have a very interesting topic, which is mall property management in the 21st century. And before I even get started, I have to tell you, I'm so excited to have the chance to be program chair. I've been a Rotarian for 8 years, and this is my first chance being a program chair. And so I am excited about this topic, not because it jumps out and grabs you, but because as you listen, you're going to find it to be kind of fascinating, I think. So with apologies to Brad Kramer, who was one of our Rotarian or fellow Rotarian, I'm going to invite everyone today to sort of start to channel your inner city planner geek as you listen to our guests today. We have 2 speakers. And before introducing them, I want to take a few minutes just to set the stage. I don't pretend to have the history of the world in my head, but I do remember when there were small local markets and there were shopping centers. And I've been to each when I was younger. I remember back when my uncle, living in Alabama, couldn't get jalapenos in his grocery store, whereas my dad, living in Arizona, he couldn't get okra, right? But over time, that's all changed. But next, I remember after just knowing that there was a shopping center with a grocery store, I remember the advent of the mall. And then after that came the mega mall. Metro Center in Phoenix, Arizona, where I spent my high school years, had an ice rink in it and one of the first food courts in the state. When it was built in the mid-1970s, it was for a time the largest mall in the West. And sometime after that, we started seeing luxury malls come forward. Those were full of those high-end stores that formerly were only available on Fifth Avenue or Rodeo Drive. And so those that I've had the chance to visit, I will tell you I visited more as a tourist than as a shopper. What does a Gucci store look like? But that was about it. Anyway, the next retail innovation was the outlet mall or the outlet stores or the outlet stores mall, whatever you want to call it. And that, I guess, we could characterize that as a giant strip mall for factory seconds or reduced, cost merchandise. Then after that came the Power Center, and I think that started to happen maybe in about the mid-1990s. Anyway, that was a clustering of large retail stores that people love, but not in a mall setting. In Idaho Falls or Ammon, our area here, think maybe of Sportsman's Warehouse paired with Bed Bath & Beyond, and you start to get the flavor of that Power Center sort of shopping experience. Then somewhere in the early 2000s, parts of America started to fall in love again with downtowns and their small shops. And so effort and energy was placed there, thinking, about the boutique experience. Well, finally, along comes the pandemic, and boom, though you may not have really understood what Cyber Monday was before, 1 year later, you were ordering your groceries from Walmart and you're picking them up 3 hours later. So in comes online retail. Well, I invite you to keep that history in your head and the thoughts we have about the evolution of retail in mind as you listen to our speakers today. And we also have to ask, or at least I do, given the ever-changing retail landscape, is there still a significant place in retail for brick and mortar? And if so, what is it? There's an interesting quote that's on the screen as well. So, this is a conversation that's not just for us. It's being had by others. So let me tell you that whenever a store or shop in Idaho Falls closes down, someone will tell me or fellow Rotarian Dana Briggs, who serves as the city's economic development coordinator, they'll tell us about it. And then they'll say, what are you going to do about it? And they're concerned. And it's hard to not want to say, oh, we'll just take care of it. Don't you worry. But in truth, the city's role is rather limited. It's hard not to want to offer that satisfactory reply, but the city has very little control over actual real estate transactions. The one reason why that is one reason why I'm so grateful to realtors and who know the business and property managers who are trained to spot potential clients and seek them out and be able to make those relationships happen. So going back to this, what is the city's role? I believe that it's simply to set the tone or to create the environment and create an environment friendly to commerce and to be able to be there to assist with the process, whether that's a permit or an engineering evaluation or something along those lines, or a building inspection. We can make those happen. And sometimes I think the city can also help with relationships, whether it's creating them or facilitating them. We can make introductions, or we can help seek out new partners and try to bring people together. But always, always, a city that wants to be effective in this space, I think, needs to always project that it's pro-business. I think my understanding, the way I view it, is that to be otherwise is to say to the rising generation, we don't want you to live in our city when you grow up. And I will tell you that no self-respecting parent or anybody who might consider grandkids in their lives, nobody would say that to the rising generation. We have to be in favor of that growth and that business environment that makes growth happen in order to assure that our kids and our grandkids have some place to live and work and play. So as we turn our attention today to Idaho Falls Grand Teton Mall, I want to just tell you another experience very quickly. About 3 years ago, I happened to be in Pocatello, and I needed to swing by the mall to get something. So I drove over to Pine Ridge Mall, and I was surprised because I'd been there the year before, and yet a year later, it really wasn't a mall-like place where I could just go in and buy the thing that I had in mind. And it had begun to be very transformed. I drove around the perimeter, and I noted all kinds of new business there, new presences there, and some were very compatible with the space. Some seemed like it was a little awkward fit. I guess, to be sure, my drive around that mall property for a student would represent a case study in the old real estate appraiser's phrase, highest and best use. You know, that's the goal, is you want to get a piece of real estate to its highest and best use. And that's not static, it's dynamic. It changes over time, as we're seeing with retail. So when I got back to Idaho Falls after that, my eye-opener in Pocatello, I asked Dana Briggs to do whatever it took for her to become a mall transition expert in her spare time. Well, one, she doesn't have much spare time, and two, she is a lot smarter than I am. And one of the first things she did was reach out to the two gentlemen who are our guests today, and she began having conversations. And soon enough, Sears announced that it was closing, and we can tell you that space will be renovated, and it will be taken up by a school, and I'll probably let our speaker touch on that a bit more. But then not too long ago, Macy's announced that the Idaho Falls store would be closing. And so while Dana can't be with us today due to a work conflict she has, she's arranged for us to hear from Drake Taylor and Brent Wilson. And they're going to share their expertise and points of view on the future of malls. And so what I'd like to do is but I'd like to introduce each of them now and then let them come up in succession. And then with the time we have at the end, we'll take a few questions. So I do invite you to type those in if you're watching on Facebook. And so first up will be Drake Taylor. He serves presently as the general manager of the Grand Teton Mall and Plaza. Drake Taylor was born the last of 5 children in Pocatello, so he understands Idaho. He graduated from Pocatello High School, served a 2-year mission in the Ukraine for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He completed a degree in strategic communications from ISU. Always a man of many interests, he landed his first job as a patent writer for a research and development company in the oil and gas exploration and extraction industry. So, how did he get from that to this? Maybe he'll tell us. But after 3 years of that and a burgeoning interest in business management, Drake became the general manager at Pine Ridge Mall in Pocatello in early 2017. So he is not unfamiliar with this transition concept. And then 3 years later, he moved into the Grand Teton Mall role. So Drake loves his job. He says he loves Idaho Falls, and he's thrilled to play a role in Idaho Falls' economic growth. And I will tell you that Drake says if he had any free time, he'd spend it reading fiction and nonfiction, writing music, exploring, and playing outdoors, and spending as much time as possible with his family. After Drake, we're going to hear from Brent Wilson, who is a realtor, very successful realtor with TOK Commercial. Brent joined that as a brokerage services specialist in 2016. He's passionate about the art and science of commercial real estate. You often will see his signage out on property that is prime for some kind of exciting development. He's committed to executing his clients' objectives with a high level of integrity and professionalism. He is also active in the world of investment sales. He's brokered many notable single-tenant and multi-tenant transactions in our region. Like I said, he's behind a lot of deals. He started his career in '96 as a land planner and entitlements coordinator with a national development consulting firm. 8 years later, he applied his background in GIS mapping, market analytics, and zoning and building codes to launch a career in commercial real estate brokerage. Those are all really key skills to have and probably account for a lot of his success. Since that time, he's coordinated hundreds of transactions with some of the nation's most significant landlords and retailers. Brent is one of 5 brokers in Idaho to have earned the ICSC Certified Leasing Specialist designation. I believe ICSC stands for International Council of Shopping Centers. And so, there's an organization and a powerful one for just about everything. 2020, he was recognized by the Idaho Business Review as one of the top 10 commercial real estate professionals in Idaho. So right now, we're going to go ahead and invite Drake to come forward and share his thoughts about the role that he's playing with Grand Teton Mall, and then after that, we'll hear from Brent. Come on over.
Hello. First off, I want to thank Mayor Casper, Dana Briggs, and IE Productions and the Rotary Club, Liza. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak here. I'm so excited to be here. I can talk about mall management and the evolution of malls and so forth for a long time. So I'm really excited. We couldn't, by the way, do any of this without the cooperation of the city. And the city has been so helpful, especially with this most recent development of the school for the Sears building, for the former Sears building, and we couldn't do it without team members like TOK and Brent and the team there, so thank you. So I'll begin by introducing myself a little bit. So I've worked in the oil and gas industry as a patent writer and trademark and all sorts of intellectual property. After spending 3 years doing that, I realized that I much preferred working with, instead of working with engineers and attorneys, I realized I prefer working with humans. And so along with this burgeoning interest in business management, I somehow and miraculously ended up as the general manager of Pine Ridge Mall and was introduced into the fascinating world of commercial real estate and contract law, business management, commercial property management. It's very diverse and intense and right up my alley. So I've been doing this for 4 years and started at Pine Ridge Mall. So let's talk a little bit about Grand Teton Mall. As you can see on my slide, the title, if I could have a title for this talk, it would be Physical Retail is Not Dead, Boring Retail Is. Now, and we're going to touch on this concept throughout the talk. So to begin, I'm going to speak about the evolution of malls in general. I'll talk on my thoughts on maintaining retail as a part of the brick and mortar economy and whether retail is going to last and what I believe through my experience and research is the future of retail. Thoughts and data regarding transitioning to more non-retail use and alternative uses for malls. And then specifically, how Grand Teton Mall is doing, as it is a very important part of this community. So to begin, I would like to set the record straight. We're all worried about e-commerce and what Amazon is doing. The mall-pocalypse is causing this retail revolution, and so much of all retail sales are e-commerce driven. So here are some statistics that you might be interested in. So in 2018, I don't know what kind of detail you can see on your screens or on this presentation, but that blue circle there for 2018 represents total physical retail sales in 2018, $3.6 trillion. The orange segment represents e-commerce, $523 billion. It's a lot, but it's not most. 2019 and 2020, you can see how it grows. Total sales in 2020 is $4 trillion, and I can't quite see, $861 billion for e-commerce. So the sales are growing, e-commerce sales are spiking, and they are growing at a very large rate. And that's great, in my opinion. I embrace e-commerce, and that's a swear word for a mall manager, I suppose. But it's here to stay, and it's not going away, and we need to figure out how to stay relevant in the community. The purpose of this statistic, though, is to show you that the vast majority of applicable retail sales still happens in brick and mortar locations. Now, the evolution of malls in general. I feel very fortunate to have gotten into this industry in a time where this evolution where it's turbulent. Malls across the country, mall companies across the country are trying to figure this out, how to stay relevant in the community. Brookfield Properties, whom I work for, owns and operates 150 or so malls across the country. And I'm very pleased and impressed with what Brookfield is doing to stay relevant in the community. But there are some things that have changed that I would like to just emphasize. If any of you are thinking of starting a business, a retail business, or even a service-oriented business, the "if you build it, they will come" attitude is false. Maybe it used to be true, but that is no longer the case. If you build it, don't expect anybody to come. What we need now are two things: customer service and customer experience. And as I've seen at this point, hundreds of tenants come and go, and as I've toured malls across the country, the customer service is what makes or breaks a company. I'd like to... I'll get rid of that box for a second. I'd like to tell a little story that my wife had experienced regarding customer service recently that illustrates this point. And I am telling this to drive home the point that it's the customer's experience that will make or break malls. That if we can get tenants to offer an incredible customer experience, then that is what will be relevant in the community today. So she ordered... There's a company called Jovi. They make these patches that you stick on your body, and they're pain-relieving patches. They use some magic voodoo. I don't know how it works, but it somehow relieves pain on your body. It's specifically for women and menstrual cycles, but it can also be used for headaches and so forth. Anyways, she ordered it to get delivered to our house, but she ended up needing it sooner. So she went to the warehouse in Rexburg, and she walks into the door, into this warehouse, and there's a front desk lady, individual, and my wife, Katie, opens the door, and the front desk person says, "Oh my gosh, are you Katie Taylor?" And Katie's like, "Yes." And the front desk lady picks up the product and runs around the desk to meet her and gives her a hug. Big hug, and says, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you to have this product. It's going to change your life. I am so excited for you." And then she looks down at our two kids, and she kneels down and says, "Are these your two kids? Oh, they're good. Oh, they're so cute. And we have some popcorn in the back. Do they want popcorn?" Stands back up. "I'm just so excited for you. And why are you coming to the warehouse to pick this up?" And Katie says, "Well, I have to go to Texas for work, and I'd like it before then." And the employee says, "Oh, are you going to work? Okay." Anyways, she made my wife feel like gold. She made my wife feel like she was wanted and that her business wasn't the first priority. And at this point, Katie, my wife, will buy, if they start selling cups of dirt, she'll buy it. And it's this customer service, not just good, very excellent, or excellent. It's phenomenal customer service that makes the difference here. And so we have customer service and a phenomenal customer experience. Now, I'd like to talk about how malls are evolving and what we're doing to adapt to the e-commerce change is real, and we need to adapt to it. So there's this. It's not a new term, but it's much more applicable these days. In order to evolve, there's something called alternative revenue that malls increasingly use, and is becoming increasingly important. So some examples are, you'll see in malls much more these days, schools, housing, gyms, arcades, museums, events, Right now at Grand Teton Mall, we're working closely with Eastern Idaho Public Health to put a vaccination clinic, a temporary vaccination clinic in the mall. And it's very close, and we're hoping to begin very soon with that. But that's another alternative use. It's something that creates a lot of value, especially during these hopefully close to be post-COVID times. It creates value for the community. When I was at Pine Ridge Mall, we did the same deal with the same entity for a school in a former Sears building. And so here we're doing the same thing with Alturas, and it's a big job to repurpose and to put a school in a former retail building. But that's the kind of thing. It's a big win. The reception around the community is kind of half and half. Oh, you're putting a school in the mall? The mall must be dying. I don't look at it that way. We put a school in the mall. It's going to bring hundreds of people to the property every day, and it keeps us relevant, and it's a big deal. It's a good thing. I will say parenthetically, or maybe not parenthetically, but regarding Macy's, so not a shock. We've been aware of the fact that Macy's will be closing for a long time, and we're prepared. So I'm looking forward to some Q&A, but I can tell you that at this point I can't tell you what's going on, but we have some momentum and good things to come with that. Anyways, so we've also other alternative uses that keep malls relevant are things like arcades. We have Keiko Joe's inside of the mall, and it's a very high-class, great arcade that people are enjoying, and they're doing really well. And so the leasing program of a mall is its strongest asset, and the alternative revenue are things that bring people into the mall for different things and keep the traffic flowing so we can continue to have a strong leasing program. So how is Grand Teton Mall doing? So obviously, let me back up. No hesitancy. We're doing well. We have a robust tenant mix, despite some vacancies as a result of COVID and just things that weren't a result of COVID. People come and go all the time. That's a part of business. Businesses live, businesses die, and people come and go. Grand Teton Mall, like I said, we have a lot of momentum, and it's miraculous. It's I wouldn't say miraculous because we have an incredible team, but it's an outlier, I think. Compared to the entire Brookfield portfolio, Grand Teton Mall, as far as recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic, is doing incredible. The tenant sales from around the mall are up compared to last year. I'll show you something in a minute that demonstrates this. And we have a lot of leasing momentum, and we feel very fortunate to be located geographically where we are. It's just a very robust part of the state, and we feel very confident and comfortable, and I'm not worried. I'm very happy to be where I am, and the mall's doing well. Let me show you something that you might laugh at. I'm going to show you some sales data. I guess that's as focused as it's going to get. So I can't show you specific data, but this chart represents the non-anchor tenants inside of the mall. And on the left, you see the tenant names. On the middle, you see the January 2020 sales. On the right, you see the January 2021 sales numbers, their revenue. And on the very right, you see that color bar. And so that's the variance of sales compared from January 2020 to January 21. Sorry, January of 2020 to January of 2021. And if it's green in any way or shade, that means that store had improved sales from January of 2020 compared to January of 2021. Now that is significant considering the pandemic that we've undergone. And people are still in recovery state, but the vast majority of our stores had improved sales this year compared to the same time last year. And 50% of those tenants had a 30% increase in sales, and half of them had a 50% year-on-year increase. Now that is honestly shocking. I didn't expect it to be that good, but people are doing well. The traffic of the mall is good. Transactions are comprised of kind of higher value transactions as opposed to quantity of transactions right now, but things are going well. I figure you have a lot of questions, or I know I've touched on a lot of points and haven't gone too deep on many points, but again, I just want to express my gratitude for the opportunity to speak. Grand Teton Mall is doing well. There's continued evolution. Nobody's figured it out 100%, but I believe that Brookfield Properties and Grand Teton Mall, in partnership with the city and with our real estate partners, are figuring it out, and good things to come. Thank you.
Hello. Before I get started, I'd like to thank Mayor Casper and Dana Briggs and Liza Leonard and everyone at Rotary for the opportunity, and also thank you, Drake, for that excellent overview of the Grand Teton Mall. The good news is, for me, it's a great time to be a retail real estate broker in our market. Our market is quite healthy right now. At the end of 2020, we ended the year with a retail real estate vacancy rate of only 6.7% in our market. And what that means is, if you take our total inventory of buildings in the market, only 6.7% of the spaces in those buildings were actually vacant. That's a very healthy metric. So what's driving this? Well, on the big box and mid box front, it's primarily what we call adaptive reuse. Drake mentioned this briefly regarding the mall as far as alternative revenue streams. Outside the mall, we're seeing a lot of adaptive reuse. The best examples I can think of are, if you look at the two former Kmart boxes we had in town, U-Haul purchased both of those and converted them to climate-controlled self-storage, and Indoor Store leased for 5 years the former Shopko building on 17th Street. And so part of what's driving this is not just the demand or lack thereof of retail, but it's also been driven by the demand for industrial space in the market. In 2020, our industrial vacancy rate was sub 3%. And basically what that means is the only buildings that are left available to be leased or purchased were functionally obsolete. So what we saw were industrial users actually occupying retail buildings for roughly the same economics. So industrial rents had risen because of the lack of supply and the impact of the demand to retail lease rates. So now we're seeing industrial users using retail buildings. Yeah, thanks for leaving that slide up there. I do want to talk about this slide briefly. We talk about the Amazon effect, and we can talk about the impact of COVID on retail real estate, but one issue that you hear people talk about very rarely is, the fact that we may have been over-retailed. We saturated the market with retail real estate in the United States over the years, especially since the 1980s. This graphic is the amount of retail square footage per person in the United States versus other developed countries around the world. And as you can see, we have quite a bit more retail real estate devoted here in the U.S. to our citizenry than other countries. And so obviously the Amazon effect has an impact, and obviously COVID had a big impact. But really, I think what we're seeing is more of a market correction. I think we've been overbuilt. And since the Great Recession of 2008 in Idaho Falls, you might notice the A locations, which would be the hit road corridor near the mall, they've always had very, very strong lease rates, whereas the outlying areas of town, kind of the B and C locations, they floundered for many years after the Great Recession of 2008. But the hit road corridor has always been strong, and I think the mall is going to continue to be strong. And part of the reason for that is what we call our regional trade area draw. So if you look at the Idaho Falls metro area, we have a little over 100,000 people in the metro area, people in Ammon, Iona, Rigby, Idaho Falls. But the more important thing from a retailer's perspective is what's our regional retail trade area draw. And so you've got people that live in Jackson, Wyoming, and Mackay, Idaho, and Island Park and Ashton, and they're going to drive to Idaho Falls to do their shopping. And so back in 1984, when John Price, who was the developer out of Salt Lake City that actually built the Grand Teton Mall, and J.C. Penney, they were very prescient in 1984 for two reasons. Number one, they saw, based on the comprehensive plan, where all the residential growth was going to occur in the market in the future. They saw that the households were going to grow on the east side of town primarily. The other thing that they were very prescient about was recognizing the importance of the hit road corridor. When we talk about this regional retail trade area draw, we're talking about a 10 county area. And if you carve up the 10 county area of people who shop in Idaho Falls, 73% of those people live along the Highway 26 or the Highway 20 corridor. And so those people that live along that corridor, when they drive to town, they don't go all the way to I-15 and backtrack. They take a left and head south on Hit Road towards the mall. And so when people wonder, well, why did Walmart locate their supercenter on Hit Road? Why did Costco pick Hit Road and Lincoln Road to locate their store? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Well, from Costco's perspective or Walmart's perspective, it makes a ton of sense. If you're trying to cater to the people that live outside our metro area that will drive into town to shop. And in Costco's case, they projected 35% of their sales would come from those outlying areas, which is why they wanted to be first in line on the Hit Road corridor for their customers. So we talked about the mid-box and the big box fronts and adaptive reuse. We're seeing actually robust activity in small shop leasing and sales as well. And primarily with small shop space, that's being driven by restaurants and personal service users. One good example locally would be Hillcrest Plaza, which was just developed over on Sunnyside Road and Eagle Drive. There's a photo of it at the bottom there. That building has been fully leased. We're going to start construction on phase 2, which is an identical strip center this spring. And even though we haven't even started moving dirt, that building has been 100% pre-leased as well. And if you look at the tenant mix, it's all personal services and restaurant users. And so one of the services we provide to companies like Costco or Walmart or Kmart or Sears is site selection and site disposition. And if you look at the factors that a retailer would consider when locating a store, these national chains, they have an office in Chicago or New York or Phoenix. They're not familiar with the Idaho Falls market. So what they do is they have about a 20-page package that they send to their real estate committee with data. And so what they're looking for is traffic counts, household incomes, daytime employment population, employment generators. And so when they take this 20-page package and they say, okay, what are the best locations in this market? In our case, that's going to be most of the time the Hit Road corridor. And so I think for a lot of reasons, the mall is going to continue to stay strong. Even with the changes that are occurring to retailing based on COVID and based on the Amazon effect, you've got 2 hospitals just down the street from the mall. You've got the College of Eastern Idaho right across the street from the mall. You've got over 1 million square feet of agglomerated retail surrounding the mall. So I don't think in the near or even distant future, the mall is going to be any less significant. It is the hub for retailing. And if you're a business that wants to set up shop in Idaho Falls, you want to capture that regional trade area draw. You're not going to locate on the periphery of town on the west side or even on the Woodruff Avenue corridor. You're going to want to be on Hit Road so you can capture that shopper that's in town from Jackson or in town from Mackey. And you're going to get that full 255,000 people in your base of shoppers, not just the locals. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. So we have a few questions that have come in, and then we have a few that we've been thinking about with the small group of Rotarians we have in studio today. And I guess I'm just going to, in no particular order, flash the questions at our guests who are now seated behind me at an appropriate distance so that they can speak into their microphones where they are. Let's talk for just a second about the demographics of a mall shopper. And Drake, this is something I expect you might know more about, but the what's the traditional clientele, and do you see any changes or any movement in those demographics?
Right now, the traditional the current clientele is women between the ages of 19 and 35 or so. That would be our strongest clientele right now. I think that's kind of been the case. I don't necessarily see many changes with that right now.
Oh, well, one of the reasons I asked, because it came to my mind when you were talking about Alturas Academy, that's
Yeah.
the school.
Uh-huh.
As they come in, they represent, a range of young people.
Yeah.
When I was in high school and that mall in Phoenix had opened up, I remember taking 2 buses, and it was a bike ride and 2 buses to get myself to that mall. But it was a social scene for teenagers. Do we have any of that going on? And do you think Alturas Academy will impact that at all, or is the youth market just not quite as robust as the female shopper market?
I would not say it's quite as robust as the female shopper market, but we definitely, Grand Teton Mall is a hangout for youth, especially on the weekends. There's mixed opinion on whether to look forward to the school bringing more youth in. In my opinion, I'm all for it. Bring in all the kids. I'm all for that. They've got a little bit of disposable income, but my security team, on the other hand, is like, all these juveniles running around. So I'm all for it. It's going to be a win. But yes, we do have a youth market, and I think that will increase. At least I hope it will with the Alturas School.
Well, staying with you for a second, Drake, how does, in your experience with Brookfield, how does our market and our mall and our situation compare with others? You touched on that a little bit, but can you elaborate any on how we compare with other properties that they manage?
Yeah, so when I was hired to the job, my boss said, well, first of all, step back a little. Grand Teton Mall is probably, out of the 150 or so malls, we're probably in the bottom 5 as far as size of mall. But my boss said, I don't know what it is about Grand Teton Mall. We can't really figure it out, but it just does well. It does really well, and so we keep it in our portfolio, and it just does really well. So compared to other markets, I look at Idaho Falls as a sanctuary of sorts. Somehow it's not somehow, there's explanation to it, but we do really well. Other markets rely on heavy metropolitan populations and so forth, but we're in a unique position where we've got a large trade area, not necessarily a dense population, but it's sustainable and healthy for them all.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just thinking about really quickly a question for you, Brent. You mentioned that that you have the graphic on retail square feet per person, and yet Idaho Falls, our daytime population swells, and then our weekend population swells. Daytime because of work, people coming in, but then weekends because of the shopping, the hub factor that you were mentioning. And so do you think that might maybe give us room for having more retail space here, or?
Yes, absolutely. In the right locations for sure. And I think, that graphic that I presented was a national trend or international trend really. But I think we're a bit different. All these small towns that we work, whether it's Twin Falls, Idaho Falls, Missoula, Montana, they all have their hit road. They all have their retail row where they capture the regional shoppers draw. So I think your point is well taken. We're certainly going to bulge, when the out-of-towners are in town to shop during holidays and weekends. If you go to Costco or if you go to Sam's Club, you'll see a lot of Teton County license plates or Fremont County license plates. So I think that's certainly the case. You're correct.
Okay. And then I'm going to stay with you again for a second. You mentioned site selection, and that's a service that you provide. And we also then, you talked about the ICSC, the International Council of Shopping Centers. And from what Dana has told me, that meeting or that annual show that they have in Las Vegas is just one of those impressive displays of so much so much retail, snazzy stuff. And apparently there are, just rows and rows of displays and retail operations that set up there trying to make connections with the people who attend. And so as you have attended that, first of all, maybe just describe it a little bit for us, but there's really no time there to have a deep discussion about our hit road corridor. There's got to be something else flashy that you inject into that dialogue when you're talking to a potential retailer that you'd like to see here. And so can you maybe describe the show and then describe how you use that as a way of drumming up some new business?
That's a great question. We jokingly refer to it as speed dating with retailers. The convention is very chaotic. We go to multiple ICSC events per year. There's a regional Western States convention in San Diego every fall that's a little bit more focused than the big Las Vegas convention. But basically, you've got retailers from all over the country, and they're setting up shop at this convention to talk to people about doing real estate deals. It's like fish in a barrel. And so we like to say we're in the case-making business as much as we are in the real estate business. These people, these national chain tenants that go to these conventions, they probably cannot find Idaho Falls or Ammon on a map. But if I can tell them their competitors are doing X number of millions of dollars a year in sales, and it's, here's our growth rate, they say, well, this should be part of our growth strategy. So at the convention, we'll sit down, we'll show them an aerial photo of the hit road corridor in the mall. We'll show them Liza's property, Sand Creek Commons, and help them understand why it's a great site. Help them understand where their customers live in the market. I know, Costco, for example, their core customer is a family with a home value of $200,000 to $400,000, and originally they were looking at the Sunnyside Road corridor. But then once they did a segmentation study and understood how important Hit Road was and where their outlying customers were coming from, they decided to move the deal to the north. But these conventions are a great opportunity to sit down face to face with retailers, get your properties in front of them, and like you said, Mayor Casper, it's an initial quick kind of, hey, here's the site. If you're interested, we'll follow up after the convention. We'll get you demographic packages. We'll get you traffic count maps, and if you're interested, we can do a letter of intent and talk about next steps.
Very good. Can you recall offhand who you may have attracted to our area because of these kinds of meetings?
Cabela's, absolutely. I remember sitting down with Cabela's in Las Vegas. Hobby Lobby, Scott Nelson. I actually ran into Scott Nelson from Hobby Lobby in San Diego at an ICSC event, and I said, I need to bend your ear. I know Eastern Idaho is on your growth map. I've got a great site. So Hobby Lobby is another great example. But really, all these retailers, whether it's Costco, Walmart, pretty much anybody in the business is going to be a part of the ICSC experience.
Okay. So, you mentioned follow-up, how that's so important. Let's do just a little bit of follow-up right now. Both of you gentlemen, there are questions coming from Rotarians. One is asking if maybe we can get a hold of that unreadable slide and make it available to Rotarians. And then I'm thinking, too, Brent, somebody wants you to repeat the numbers you shared regarding daytime employment. Or can you share that detail again? Or should we plan on sharing the slides? Is there a way that we can maybe make that happen? You have any objection to that, making the slides available?
I think it should be fine.
Okay, double check and then we'll follow through on that. But can you talk a little bit about the daytime employment issue?
Yeah, one of the things, especially with restaurant operators, they're concerned with is how much daytime employment is nearby. How much lunch business can we expect to do? And so if you're a restaurant looking to locate in the market, you're going to track your competitors' sales volumes to see how they're doing. And then you're going to also try and figure out how many employers are in the area. And one of the metrics that they look at is called the daytime employment volume. And they're going to look at either a 2-mile or a 3-mile radius, depending on their business model. And, in Idaho Falls and Ammon, if you're anywhere near the mall, you're going to have about 35,000 daytime employees within 3 miles. Conversely, actually, the west side of town is really strong for daytime employment. The area near downtown, you've got the same 35,000 daytime employees in a 3-mile radius, plus you've got over 2,200 hotel rooms. So that's an aspect, if you're a restaurant operator, that's pretty significant and can make the difference, west side versus Hit Road.
So, Brent, do you need to be a subscriber to get that data, or is that data available somewhere where people can see it?
I'm not aware of any government publications that provide that data. We actually get it through a company called ESRI,
Okay.
Geographic Information Systems Company.
Yes.
But there's multiple vendors out there.
Great. Okay, thank you. Can both of you, just for a minute, take a second and think, what kinds of retail, in your opinion and in your experience, what kind of retail do we maybe need, or office space, or what kind of physical space do we need more of in Idaho Falls? This is a thoughtful silence.
I'll start. You know,
Sure.
I am really, really bullish on downtown Idaho Falls. I think we have one of the coolest downtowns in the West. And if you look at what works downtown across the country, where you've got power centers across town and regional malls across town, how do we revitalize our downtowns? What works across the country without fail in downtowns is entertainment, dining, and specialty retail like Jimmy's All Season Angler or Lynn's. Those types of retailers do great downtown. They're probably not going to go to the mall. They're not a national tenant, but man, they make our downtown so much cooler.
Okay. Any thoughts coming from you, Drake, on what we might need more of, whether it's the space or maybe just the retailers?
Yeah, I echo Brent. I also agree. Dining, entertainment, and specialty retail. I don't necessarily believe we need more than we have of traditional conventional retail, but the experience-based stuff is, I think, what we need, and that includes dining, specialty retail, because that's kind of a new experience, and the entertainment. In addition to that, I believe and I feel strongly that everybody needs to significantly ramp up their customer service experience, because it's huge. It's bigger than most people are willing to admit. It takes a lot of work and insight, but I think that's what we need.
All right. Thank you. Now, Drake, you had mentioned in your comments that leasing was an asset for the mall. Can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes, when I say a leasing program is the biggest asset, one of the biggest assets of the mall, that what I am referring to is your tenant mix. So, you know, a mall can do all it can to market itself on Facebook, or it's by throwing events or getting all these other sorts of alternative revenue sources in to drive traffic and so forth. And that's all great, but the strongest marketing program and asset of the mall is to have a strong leasing program. That includes people who are capable of securing good leases for the mall and getting good tenants into the mall. And we're constantly on that. People say, hey, when are you going to get H&M in the mall? There's a lot more to it than even having top-of-the-class leasing personnel to. It's the population, and it's what H&M wants. Do they want an area like this, or do they require a metropolitan area of 3 million plus? But yeah, that's what I mean by a strong leasing program.
Yeah, they might be on my top 5 list too. Thinking about, and I guess that both of you will probably have an opinion on this, but when I think about the mall as real estate, I see not just the footprint of the building itself, but I see an awful lot of concrete, acres of concrete, or not concrete, asphalt. And so I'm wondering, is there any thought being given to, you know, the future? The future will probably have fewer cars, they say. They've told me at some meetings, don't ever think about putting parking garages downtown, because at some point people are going to have their car, take them downtown, and then push a button and tell the car to go home. Or there's going to be enough ride sharing that cars will not be an expensive asset that you use just minutes a day. And so I'm just curious as to what your thoughts are about all of that parking area. Is there too much? Is there a plan maybe to develop some of that? Either one of you have any thoughts there? This is conjecture.
Yes. As far as Grand Teton Mall, so most of the time, all of the parking is not taken. I don't know if I've ever seen all the parking that has been taken, but during the holidays, you need that parking. And so during December, it might be 80% full, and the rest of the year it's kind of empty. And it's like, what is this wasteland of asphalt doing here? So you need that asphalt. At the same time, Brookfield, we're all about developing and putting other good uses on our land, if it's a good opportunity, but you do need parking right now. I haven't heard anything corporately yet about reducing the parking lot area because there will be less cars or something. We do have some environmental initiatives that we're thinking about, but yeah.
Okay, very good. And any thoughts on that yourself?
I would add that Americans love our cars. I mean, there's nothing more American than the car. And you know, the other thing too is a lot of our shoppers that go to the mall or go to Sam's Club or Costco are from out of town, and they are there to stock up. And so you're going to fill up that SUV. And so I don't know that ride sharing is going to cut it for the out-of-town shopper, but I hope alternate modes become a reality just for the quality of life aspect.
All right. Well, we thank you. We have had a lot of questions come in, a few more on my paper that we're not going to get to, but I'll just mention that we've had the Trader Joe's issue come up. We've also had one of our Rotarians highlight that there are some recreational type, entertainment type things that could possibly fit in the mall space. You talked about the customer experience, wondering if maybe the mall could lend itself as much to shopping and eating as it would maybe to just going there to have fun. Is that something that's on the radar? Just very quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have any ideas, bring it my way.
All right. Well, Idaho, let's see, I Fly Skydiving Simulator or the Flow Rider Indoor Surfing. So we'll have to hook you up with this Rotarian.
Let's do it.
All right. So I hope you enjoyed this, experience today where we got a chance to think about the future of retail in our city and the role that it plays and what the behind-the-scenes efforts are that go into bringing retail experiences to Idaho Falls residents or to Eastern Idahoans. I will also just let you know that next week I'm excited to tell you that Dana Kirkham, who is chair of the Idaho Falls Funland Restoration Committee, she is going to be with us, and she'll be talking a bit about the history and the goals behind this effort to try to make Funland into a sparkling gem for Topaz Park again. And so, because it's been closed down for a little while, as you know, and so we're trying to bring that back. So she'll be talking about those efforts. And I think it'll be a bit of a trip down memory lane for those of you who grew up here. So you may want to tune in for that. Rotarians, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your valuable time with us. And thank you for learning with us. So take care, and we'll see you next week.